Hey, what's up, everybody? I know I've been off for a minute and had my goal of having, posting a video every day for this month. Unfortunately, I pretty much failed at that. I mean, I just got it off to a good start, but then it fell off. But I'm getting back on, and I gotta step it up, and it's only 1 month, so, you know, I can still definitely catch up, and it's not even the whole month. So here we go. It is chapter 7 for the book Traction. Now, in this one, what he talks about is documenting processes. So, what the you don't want to like document every little thing that your company does, because you're going to have like this huge booklet, and it's just going to be too meticulous. It's especially once your company becomes bigger and bigger and you have more and more positions, then it's just going to be, you're basically just going to kill a tree just to print one copy of that. Of course, you can have it online, but even so, it can be way too much, especially, for simpler tasks where you don't really necessarily need to formulate them. But the rule of thumb that he gives is the 20-80 rule. And so what that means is document 20% of the procedures that give you 80% of your where you generate 80% of your revenue from. And then you make sure and then once you document it and have everybody document their processes, and then have them down to critique, kind of formulate them, cut them down to a T. Then what you want to do is basically once it's set, then you work on getting this ingrained into your business. So what you want to do is create a circle of life for your business. And what this does is it brings everybody in it brings everybody into the full scope, right? So you understand, what your position is, and then you understand how your position affects other positions, and then you get to see you get to see what other people see in the company, so you can understand. So instead of saying, well, that's not my job, like, I can see that this is a problem, so if it's messed up, then it's on them. You need to understand why you get why you get certain information and other people don't, so that you can, not be as dismissive, and you can make that work to make that connection, so everything runs a lot more smoother. And a lot of the times, people may say, oh, whatever, like, you may not kind of pass up on the details because it's kind of whatever. You don't see it as important until you see it full circle, and then it's like, oh, every time I don't let's say I don't clean out the trash or something like that in the office, then it's like it smells bad, and when it smells bad, people get upset, and when people get upset, they're not as they have lower patience on the phone, and when they have lower patience, then people get upset, and then when they're upset because they're yelling at people on the phone, customers are upset, and when customers are upset, the business doesn't work out as well. And like I said, it makes your business a lot more inclusive, because it's like, okay, I need to or here's the thing, what it gets back to, or the human nature, why it's important as far as human nature, which is people are more accountable when other people are reliant on them rather than themselves. And that's I mean, that's true for me, where if I have to, let's say for instance, I have to, like I say, like, oh, I want to go run, or I want to go exercise, or I have to do this. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of tired, so instead I'm gonna sleep, or yeah, I'll do that tomorrow, or yeah, I'll just wait till later, and then I'll get my exercise in, or whatever. I'll come up with whatever excuse there is. But it's like, if they're like, hey, let's get together and go work out, or go for a run, or do this or do that at 6 a.m., and especially if I'm the only other person, it's like, normally I would just be like, yeah, whatever, like I said, I'll do it later. But I'm going to if somebody else is going to be there, and it's like they're waiting for me, like, hey, I'm here, like, where are you, then I feel bad. Then I feel bad. So even if I don't want to run, I also don't want that person to be by themselves or think any less of me. So it's gonna be a lot more important to me to be there. So that's why, success is really attributed to accountability. And I was also thinking about this because, or how this relates to, like, I want to be the president of U of L, and I've been seeing a lot of problems. Like, I read an article in the school newspaper about a survey that they did, and even though it was a small amount of people that the school that participated in, it said 50% were unsatisfied with their job. And there were also some other factors too, like it wasn't as descriptive enough, but still, it shows that even between the two, that it's not good enough where they would lean more towards being satisfied as opposed to dissatisfied. So I think that's something to read into. And another thing is, they talked about a lot of people saying, a complaint was people. Oh, well, another thing about to look in, you know, to look at deeper sense of the numbers, is that perhaps that the reason why the numbers is so low for the return on the survey was that people don't feel like their voice is being heard. So they don't see value in expressing themselves, because they feel like it's a waste of time. That'll fall on deaf ears. So I think that's really important in the show, that there really is something, even if the survey wasn't done correctly and a lot of people didn't participate. I think the inaction speaks a lot bigger than, what you can directly read into. And a lot of people cited stuff like, um, being understaffed and having to work through that, a lot of the few times a week, having to work through lunches to get their stuff done. And what it made me think about, and as far as these, how these board meetings, and how everybody's suit and tie and all this fancy stuff and whatever, I have no problem with professionalism. It is important for people to kind of to respect you, especially if they don't know you. But another thing to me is, though, about being in charge of a school, is I think it's really important to humble yourself. And I think a lot of leaders either don't have that, or they lose that in these sort of positions, whether it's a mayor, whether, or the president of the people in charge of the schools. It's kind of like, sometimes people get to a point, and whether or not they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, people either don't know anything about, the come up, and, the struggling, and those little jobs that actually do make a big impact, like being janitors and stuff like that, or they've just been up on the up and up for so long that they become disconnected. And that's one of the things that's really important, and that I feel is really important. Like, you see, for instance, like, the always, like, seeing like, politicians, they do the breaking ground, which, to me, is just like the stupidest thing ever. It's like these fancy shovels, and they just put some dirt in front of wherever with the site, and they just stick their shovels in and toss it, kind of like ribbon cutting. I really don't understand all that pageantry stuff. And like for instance, I remember a person, I think it was in Vermont or something, like the mayor was driving uh, a plow truck during the snowstorm. Now, you know, sometimes it is pandering, but I think there is like a core of that that can be authentic, that is important. When you're not trying to do it I think it becomes more authentic if more often than not when you are doing it, there's not a camera there like with Trump when he got behind the when he got behind the semi truck and was pretending to drive it, or how like stupid stuff like John Kerry went hunting with people. Like if it's one thing if that's what you know if you're kind of showing your true self and how you can relate with what's considered the blue collar workers, regular people, whatever you want to call it, or be having doing activities that make you more relatable. If you do stuff like that, like it should at least be like something you would do regardless of the cameras being there. But as far as what it relates to the school, I don't. If you really care about if you're really dedicated to what you do, like you have no problem humbling yourself. And so what I mean by that is, I think what would be really helpful at the school would be, having kids and having professors, every once in a like have taking turns and stuff, vacuuming, cleaning out trash cans. Now you could say, oh well, that takes a job away from somebody. Yeah, that is 100% right. But at the same time, I think a part of a school should be self-sufficiency, and I think the as opposed to having the job, that one job or a couple of jobs, whatever that activity may create, I think the much bigger impact is having people do it, and like I said, humbling themselves. It's kind of like how everybody should uh, do customer service jobs, because then they would understand a better. They wouldn't, even if things went bad, like the food is cold or they mess up your order, whatever it is. You would never get an attitude with people. You would never like they're the ones that they're just like, oh, screw this person and they're messing up the food. It's like, no, I'm the waitress or I'm the waiter. All I'm doing is bringing the food to you. Like I'm not sitting there. I don't go back in the kitchen and make it and then bring it out to you. And so I think stuff like that is, that sort of humbling. I think that creates a lot greater success, because I think it's important to stay grounded. So like I said, if I was a president, like you take care of this stuff like it's yours. So doing stuff like, vacuuming and, like I said, taking out trash, like you shouldn't be above any of that stuff. And like I said, it's okay to still have workers do that, but I think it's important when to part of delegating and elevating, that you shouldn't have people doing stuff that you wouldn't do. If you wouldn't take out the trash, if you wouldn't vacuum, if you wouldn't sweep up X, Y, and Z, then you shouldn't be making somebody else do it, because that's when you turn into that's when you become a boss and not a leader, or I should say more so leading from the behind as opposed to from the front. But as I finish this up, so yeah, create a circle of life visual so that people understand everybody's importance, and then share it with the company and retrain everybody, and have make sure your management team is following that to a T. And like I said, that really, again, even at every single level, that goes along the same things, is that it's okay to say like, okay, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, but people tend to get pushback, especially when it's something that you couldn't do yourself, and you're copping an attitude with the person. Leadership is real. Like true leadership to me is it's really important to be able to humble yourself and understand that even if you're the boss, even if even if like I said, you're the head of the school, you're ahead of the business, you're ahead of this, and you have a lot of power and you can fire people and do you know you you can have a lot of power, more power than anybody else does. It doesn't mean that you can just treat somebody like dirt, because they could just as easily walk out on you, and then you won't have anybody, because they could easily get together and at some point, even if they need a job, I feel that everybody has a breaking point. And so it's really important to respect people and uh, make sure that they're being appreciated. Like it's really crazy. Like when you talk about like stuff with morale, and of course, once you get bigger and bigger companies, it's difficult to do. But at the same time, it's more difficult to do it. But at the same time, it doesn't take much. It's not, and people always say, "Oh, we can't afford this." It's tough times, or but it's not. A lot of your best workers don't always need more money. Just sometimes being feel valued, and that they're that somebody, right, like if they're busting their ass, or they're doing this, that they're getting recognized. That if you're maintaining that consistency, and you're putting in that effort, and it doesn't mean like you can't just be dangling promotions and stuff in front of people, but at the same time, just little stuff, little, like, hey, here's a gift card, hey, here's this, hey, you can take an extra hour for your lunch. Just little stuff like that. You really don't know how far that stuff can go with people, and how much, just spending 10-20 minutes with somebody, and maybe a couple dollars, or having lunch with somebody, how much that really means to somebody. And like I said, it's the little stuff. I like Herman Edwards. He says you got to sweep the corners. Like when everybody's happy, that's when you don't sweep the corners. You always got to humble yourself and pay attention to detail, because when you get too high up on stuff, that's when you start to fall. But anyway, my time's running out on this, so peace.